Welcome to our webinar. It's called Israel-Palestine Issue and the West. I think it will be the first English webinar that's organized in Turkey by any NGO regarding to the latest development in Gaza and Palestine. First of all, I would like to thank you, our Director of Associate Professor Oğuzhan Bilgin, that facilitate us to be together here. And of course, I would like to thank for the distinctive speakers today that accepted to be in our webinar. First of all, I would like to mention a little bit about how the event is important in terms of timingly. And the world is watching right now what's happening in the Palestine regarding the latest development since the 7th of October, and most of the public opinion and the media focusing on the West and how they position itself related with the happening on humanitarian issues and also historical and the political sides of the Israel-Palestine issues. First, I will introduce today's speakers. Valeria Giannotta, she's a director of Turkish Observatory in CeSPI from Italy. We have the Dr. Tarek Cherkaoui. Please accept my apology if I'm misspelling your name or surname. He's the director of the TRT World Research Center, and we have the Klaus Jurgens. He is the director of the media company, and he's right now currently based in the Austria. Once more, thanks for the coming. I didn't want to take your time too much. We will have the 2 rounds. In the first round, I will take your opinion mostly on how it started and how your country's public opinion and the government reacted to the situation, and how you see the West position regarding the humanitarian issues. First of all, I would like to give floor to Dr. Tarek. Tarek, would you also please inform us regarding how it started and how the myth of the Israel army as well as its intelligence, what really happened in the 7th of October and later on?
Well, thank you very much for for the invite in this very, very timely and very informative webinar in company of those excellent analysts that you have and experts. So to your point, I really, I would like first to make, a first reaction to say that what the events that happened in the October the 7th were not a surprise. They were not a surprise because this is not a conflict that started on the 7th of October. This is a conflict that has been going on for at least 75 years, since 1948. The first point that, the sub point that I need to make is that Israel has been in breach of international law. There have been a lot of United Nations declarations and statements and clauses about this conflict. They have never been respected. Israel has been actually occupying the West Bank for 56 years. It has been blockading Gaza for 17 years. This blockade has been very tight. It has been completely suffocating this small bunch of territory. So Gaza has been, Israel has been controlling all the territory of Gaza from the maritime side, from the airspace, even the electromagnetic spectrum. There have been all points of exit have been under the control of the Israelis. So the first point is being in a breach of international law and in a colonial endeavor. There should be no surprise when there is a reaction. The second thing is that this kind of reactions and flare-ups of the conflict are also no surprise, because the Palestinians have been fighting to liberate their homeland for 75 years. They have been doing so in many phases throughout history. In 48, and again they try to do it from different places like Lebanon and like from Jordan. And then they have been trying also find a way via peaceful demonstration, like in the first Intifada. They have been trying different things, and this is part of a long journey of struggle that has lasted 75 years. And my third point about like the sub point of the first, about my reaction is that there is a long track record of repression, of massive human rights exactions. Thousands of people, thousands of Palestinians have been in prison. They call it administrative detention, but unfortunately, this is just a euphemistic term. These are people who have been in prison without trial. And we understand that if we want to qualify an injustice, is like you put people in prison for long terms without any accusation, without any formal process, without any trial. And this, unfortunately, has been the case. We don't forget also what the settlers have been doing in the West Bank. A lot of people have been killed, a lot of misappropriation of assets, a lot of misappropriation of land. So this is, again, when you know the situation inside, then there is absolutely no surprise. The fourth point, the sub point, is that Israel has been refused to really find a peaceful solution. They have been delaying, they have been obfuscating, they have been trying to find holes, they have been trying to create gaps between the Palestinian movements, create problems between Fatah and Hamas. They have been delaying this thing. They have been trying to talk to everybody except the Palestinians. Like the Abraham Accords is pathetic, because you want to talk to Mauritania and Saudi Arabia and then not talk to the people who are the primary concern. This has been a very foolish endeavor and a wishful thinking by some elites in Israel, by thinking that this kind of accords would lead to a peace. And finally, the sub point that I want to make is that armed struggle is legitimate under international law. Any kind of endeavor that is hoping to fight colonialism and fight misappropriation of your land, of your homeland, is very agreeable under international law. The French have done it when they were under a Nazi occupation. The United States, they fought like the British and won their independence. So armed struggle is very legitimate under international law, especially that there have been the breach of international law. So from this, I want to make my second point, which is, my problem is right now is about the thematic versus episodic treatment of events. I just want to clarify that there is a book that was done by a major scholar called Shanto Iyengar, and it's called "Is Anyone Responsible?" So in this book, Shanto was one of the first who brought to the attention that media actually they are participating actively to actually obscuring the realities rather than explaining to the public. And in this case, why I'm saying it's episodic, because when we see most of the mainstream media, we find that everything is about like 7th of October, as if this conflict just started on the 7th of October. So the thing about this episodic treatment is that it's very narrow-minded. It doesn't go to the all the explanation. It focuses on the what, on the when, on the who, but it never addresses the why. And this is why the thematic approach would have been much more appropriate, because we are dealing here with a problem that has been lasting since 75 years. We are dealing with a colonial endeavor. We are dealing with the settlers problem. We are dealing with multiple complexities that we cannot just explain via very simplistic frames and just trying to allocate responsibility, the whole responsibility to like a group, or trying to portray it as this is like a terrorism against, against like benevolent, peaceful people, because this is not the reality. And if we adopt a thematic approach and a thematic treatment, then we will know that's how the state of Israel was created. And if you want us to talk about terrorism, let's talk about Menachem Begin and Yitzhak Shamir. Who are these guys? They both were prime ministers of Israel, but they both were the leaders of terrorist organizations. They actually assassinated the UN representative who tried to solve the issue in 1948. I don't want to dwell into history, but just if you adopt a thematic approach, it's much more it helps much more to understand and grab the facts and understand how these things is going on and why certain reactions, when they happen, they shouldn't be as a surprise. My third point would be, why is Israel so rattled, and why is we have seen the reactions from the United States bringing like major aircraft carrier, bringing major equipment, major hardware to Israel. Israel is already overarmed, is surarmed. It's already superior to most of its to its neighborhood combined. If you combine all forces, Israel has enough weaponry. Plus, it has the nuclear weaponry, so it has already. It doesn't need this. But why are these people coming? Why are this mobilization from the Pentagon and all these forces that are coming? It's because there is something that has happened with the attacks of the October 7th, which is shattering a major myth, a major founding myth of Israel, which is the myth of invincibility, because this is a colonial endeavor. This is an endeavor that aspires to take land from a region that it is not part of. So the whole point was to create this small country that is higher militarily and superior militarily than all its neighbors combined. But what we have seen is that this is a small group. This small group have attacked, by surprise, and it is the result of the success is actually a result of a failure, or a stunning intelligence failure of both actually the Israelis and the US. The Israelis have had some of the best equipment in terms of spying hardware. They have electronic eyes, they have satellite, they have eavesdropping, the best techniques. Some of these techniques don't even exist in some Western countries. So by having this attack that was so surprising, it shattered one of the founding myths that Israel is invincible, that Israel is superior to everybody else. And what is ironic is that this invisibility has been shattered by a small group, not even by a state. And my final point in this round would be that the resulting response that happened from the West, and especially from the EU, was very disappointing, because we needed some adults in the room, but unfortunately we didn't find any adult in the room. We find only childish behavior. We have this Ursula von der Leyen. She is not even elected at the head of the EU. She keeps on issuing statements. She has put the EU as basically as just a follower. We needed the EU to be a leader, to be to represent a third force that could bring peace, that can bring the parties together. But unfortunately, the EU has damaged this, and this reaction was so biased in favor of Israel. It has been so unequivocal in supporting a policy that is very damaging, a policy that is very oppressive. This is a colonial state, endeavor, and the EU is all behind it. We understood the US. The US, Biden was clear. He said, if Israel didn't exist, we will invent it. But we didn't understand that kind of very disappointing statement from the EU. And unfortunately, we have to know that this problem has been created by Europe. This creation of Israel is the European problem that has been transferred to the Middle East. And not only that, when Oslo signing happened, the accords, Europe was behind it. They give insurance to everybody that this is the solution. Everybody will be happy. This is a win-win situation. And then now they have abandoned all their guarantees that they have given initially. So there will be no Palestinian state. And unfortunately, they have just reneged on all these obligations, which makes their response and their reaction and their posture very, very disappointing. I will end here, and I'm happy to take the next round.
Thank you, Dr. Tarek. I noted too much things, especially related with the abolishment of the Israeli superiority when it comes to intelligence and military. I think in the second round, we will also discuss that that kind of trauma in Israel led to more violence on the Palestinians, especially the civilians. And you concluded your words with the EU position, and especially very shameful movements that unfortunately moved by the von der Leyen and even the the EU countries reacted her and her position in the first day, and later we saw the Charles Michel's the webinar with the EU member countries. So I would like to give floor to Valeria, because Valeria, we will be very happy to give insights, the Italy position and the Italian government position, as well as how you see the EU's kind of the failure on the EU values, as well as how the EU seems itself as a great power in international actor, or is already so far from to that kind of idea.
Thank you, Suay, and let me thank the Diplomacy Foundation for organizing such a timely event, and thank you to my friends and colleagues, Tarek and Klaus, for their contribution, actually, for being here. Well, let me say that basically the situation, according to my understanding and interpretation, it's very concerning. I mean, when I look, I'm a European, but when I look at Europe and European Union, in a way that we are experiencing a sort of crisis of legitimacy in Europe. And the European Union is as well a multi-cephalic institution. So we have in one side the President of the Commission, van der Leyen, on the other side, the President of the Council, Michel, and there is no, and also the representative of foreign affairs of European Union, Joseph Borrell, and there is no a univoc line to follow. When the crisis erupted in front of such a massive attack, all European members just stood up by standing close to Israel. Roberta Metsola, the President of European Parliament, just tweeted her picture with standing by the Israeli flag. And that has created a sort of domino effect within the European cancellaries and also the European institutions. And then you mentioned about von der Leyen and the shameful behavior, because von der Leyen made such a statement, and then along with Roberta Metsola went directly to Netanyahu, to Israel, just to show solidarity without by neglecting actually that there is another side of the coin. There are people suffering, they are constantly a target by Israel in the Gaza Strip and the Palestinians, people as well. Then by time to time, the position of Ursula von der Leyen did not change, while we had witnessed a sort of a more moderate stance by Michel and by the Joseph Borrell, that they got both aligned to UN and what Guterres said, that there is a humanitarian catastrophe going on and we need to refrain from violence and we needed to find a ceasefire solution. But this was just a narrative, because when you look at the pragmatic element, the concrete element, European Union just has frozen basically the funds in the first step that they were supposed to be delivered to the Gaza Strip and to the Palestinian people. So nowadays, European Union does not send any humanitarian aid or financial support to those people. They're on the table, they are still thinking and mediating and advising on creating a sort of humanitarian corridor to send people, to send aid to Palestinians. The main concern of European Union, as well as Italy and the other European countries, is that any kind of support to Palestinians will go directly to the hand of the Hamas organization. So basically, this is the institutional frame, and I will say also a sort of schizophrenic behavior within the European Union as a bloc. But then there is the other level to consider, which is the single state behavior and stance. That to some extent, the European states are defending the right of Israel of existing and the right of Israel of self-defense. And they are primarily targeting Hamas as a terroristic organization. And there is as well a sort of fatigue in making a distinction between the Palestinian people, the innocent people, and the violent act and terrorist act by the Hamas organization. When it comes to Italy, Italy has been, well, I would like to remind that Italy has been one of the founding members of European Union before the Union became Union. And under Giorgia Meloni, Italy, of course, stood just by Israel in the first sense. Now they are trying to mediate. I mean, the Italian government has attended the forum in Egypt. And after that, our Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, went and paid a visit to Netanyahu. The narrative is that we need to speak with all stakeholders in the conflict and also with all regional stakeholders, but this is arising a sort of criticism overall from the Arab world, because the perception is that beside words and narratives, then there is a concrete action, and this is the full solidarity again to Israel. But the Italian public opinion is polarized, I will say. It's like we are watching a football competition, and there are two groups of supporters. On one side, there are the people that also, they are very active through the social media, and you can read, they have their own mainstream media referring to that they are strongly support Israel without any other further analysis. And on the other side, there are a group of people gravitating under the leftist parties, so the opposition group movements, that they are trying to also through some protests in the street, they are trying to support and show solidarity to the Palestinian and the people trapped in the Gaza streets. What makes the difference basically between Italy and some other European countries, such as France, for example, that there is still this freedom of protesting, freedom of thought. I mean, of saying what you think. I mean, they do not ban the protest and the rallies in the street by opposition or by the government. Now I mention France because I think what's happening and what I read also this morning in the Italian newspaper is a bit concerning. Because once again, the hot topic of the clash of civilization has come back. So in the media, you can read about it. On the television, there are some commentators that are speaking about this, and everything has been also, not verbally, but in practice, repeated by Emmanuel Macron. Because Emmanuel Macron stood up by saying that we need to create a sort of alliance, or Western alliance against Hamas, as we did back in 2016, creating a Western group against ISIS. And here again, bring me to think that there is not a clear understanding that Hamas and ISIS, Daesh, are not the same. So there is not the same type of terrorism, if terrorism we want to call, and it's not the same organized violence. I mean, the situation is pretty much concerning, according to my understanding. What I see that there is no a will to de-escalate the tone, to put any effort in creating a sort of de-escalation zone. There is no a great effort also in submitting anything to the Security Council of UN in order to create a concrete margin of for a real ceasefire. And so far as well, any sort of resolution that has been brought to the UN Security Council has been denied. And I'm referring in this case to Russia, for example, that has submitted to resolution. And once again, my mind goes to the fact that we are under the direction of some international institutions that once again need to be reformed because they reflect a different distribution of power and very competing interests nowadays. Just I wanted to remark that when it comes to European Union, unfortunately, we are witnessing what it happened 2 years ago along the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. So European Union is not able to develop its own thought in a positive and constructive way, and also I would say in a diplomatic way. There is no diplomatic leverage any longer, but with these heads, with this von der Leyen and with these institutions, there is a sort of a very dry following on what US and Biden are saying. So there is a complete alignment between this European Union and the US administration. And it seems that Israel has been trapped into a sort of syndrome of weakness, right? That you just emphasize how strong you are, how much right you have, but then you are not able also to look out of the box. And this, unfortunately, has been supported by the main Western actors nowadays. That's why I do believe, I do fear that the conflict is going to last, and the general atmosphere also in Europe and in Italy is not so positive. Let's put it this way. So I stop here and I give the floor to Klaus, that I'm sure he will add more. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Actually, it's you give too much interesting, insightful, especially in the division of the Italian public and concerning on a new clash of civilization will be coming or not. I would like to definitely touch upon in the second round. For the first round, the third speaker will be the Klaus. Klaus, I know you do lots of work on how the German media reacted the whole situation since the 7th of October, and we saw the Chancellor Olaf Scholz visit to Netanyahu, especially just after the hospital attack. So please, floor is yours. Let's enlighten us related with how the Germans see that the situation. And just I just want to remind that yesterday our president underlined that Europe have kind of credit to Israel, but Turkey doesn't have. And most of the public directly linked with the Germany's position and what the president says. So how you will see the situation?
Thank you very much, Suay, Valeria, Tarek. A great honor to be on board. Sorry for the technical glitch I'm getting out. Now, yes, I will focus a bit on what we call the German Schuld complex, the guilt complex, which unfortunately plays an absolutely vital role in what is going on in Europe at the moment. But if I may start with, you mentioned the media. Yes, I've just penned actually 2 articles about German media reaction after the events, 7th of October. Now, one headline I put into my headline, duly quoted, was from German state television, ARD, who on the day and even afterwards referred to all what happened as explosion at a hospital. Well, fair enough. We speak a lot about disinformation and fact-finding. Then I quoted a number of newspapers who automatically said that Israel is under attack, that Hamas, the terrorists, have struck, that there was no relative honest news going back into the source of the conflict. Tarek mentioned this. It is 75 years old. And German media, of course, many of us work for media. If you unfairly complain now about colleagues, that would be as bad as what they do. But there was no fair reporting. And how can you be fair in such atrocities? It was putting all the blame automatically on Palestine. It was putting all positive developments, if this word is allowed, to defend yourself onto the Israeli side. Now, if you would be a member of the German public, your state television, the second television, private television, mainstream media, I quoted, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, Süddeutsche Zeitung, you must switch me off. I could go on for hours about this. If the German media works like this. And the German public, still reeling from COVID, Corona, financial crisis, trying to make ends meet, the Ukraine situation, now what happened here, 7th of October. I can't even blame the German public for ultimately giving in. If this is the only news you see 24 hours and you have no time to do your own research, ultimately you say they must be right. Israel is right and the Palestinians are wrong. Just as a kind of introduction to the topic. What was missing in all of these reporting, and we mentioned this before, my friends mentioned, it goes back to 1947. And the Germans are extremely good at history, normally, the country of thinkers and philosophers, as they refer to us now, but very often parts of history are discreetly blackened out. And it seems the Palestine conflict is one of such topics. 1947, the end of the British Mandate. And the plan was actually to have a Palestine state, the state of Israel, and East Jerusalem as one of the capitals, and East Jerusalem under international mandate. As we all know, 1948, the Arab-Israeli conflict broke out, and what looked good on paper did not really work out in reality. 1988, from the exile, we all remember watching it on television or being closely involved. The state of Palestine was basically declared in 1988. Now, up until this very day, large parts of United Nations members, what Valeria mentioned, large parts of the international community shy away to even get close to a two-state solution. And a two-state solution, if it would have come and being implemented correctly many, many years and decades ago, according to my modest insight, would have evaded, made so much loss of innocent life impossible. That was kind of an introduction. Please really cut me off if I'm too long about this. Now, what I really wanted to focus on the first round is the German Schuld complex. Why? Now, I grew up in post-war Germany. I am not one of the baby boomers. I'm actually the generation behind, but rather old. Now, we grew up in the firm belief that we don't want to talk about fascism anymore. We know what happened. We are a young generation. We have become a democracy. And here I refer to the year 1976, when then Social Democrat Chancellor Helmut Schmidt declared our country being a model country. And the entire election campaign he won handsomely was based on Modell Deutschland. Democracy, economy, looking east, north, west, south, still being a divided nation, but trying to build bridges with everyone, and a rather successful country. This was 3 years after the oil crisis, where no more cars were driving on a German Autobahn for 4 weeks in a row. Now, 3 years later, the Germans somehow managed to come out on top. The one issue which was a no-go, a no topic, was criticizing Israel. I was a bit involved in youth and student movements at the time. You could do anything you want. You could support each and every liberalization movement in all 4 corners of the world, but you could under no circumstance approach Israel with a certain amount of criticism. This is correct for the Conservative Party at the time, definitely correct for the Social Democratic Party. Let's be fair, the Greens were not there at the time, and the Liberals were more into economy. So we had a clear consensus among German elites that the state of Israel has a right to exist, that we do not criticize it. And why do we not criticize it? Because we know what had happened under the barbaric times of Nazi and Hitler fascism. So we did not want to erase our collective historical memory. We said our generation had and has to move on. Under one condition: we refrain from criticizing the state of Israel. It was literally state policy, even if it was not written in the constitution. Which brings me to what I refer to as the kibbutz phenomenon. Now, our generation actually was invited by the state of Israel to travel to Israel and live for a time in a kibbutz, to learn about solidarity, to learn about basically being anti-capitalist, because you share whatever you produce. You live in a communal way, like a left communal way, although the government at the time was not leftist at all. And you would be surprised, not in particular socialist or social democratic student and youth movements went to Israel. It was the conservatives who decided, what can we do to overcome our Schuld complex? We can't make fascism undone, but we can lend a hand. We go to Israel, we show them we are young Germans who are intent on peace and not on destroying Israel. This was again a kind of non-written state policy in all governmental, non-governmental organizations, and definitely in the media. So people went to the kibbutz and came home and say, Israel is a modern country based on solidarity, based on communal living. Look, this is something positive. Only marginal groups at the time actually went into one topic in particular. It was the orange plantation in the lands of Palestine, and what happened with being basically being made devoid of your source of income by foreign actors, by basically belittling any chance of what Palestine could do. And this was a kind of footnote in history, unfortunately. We had student movements supporting Palestine, yes, of course. There was no problem when you had a demonstration in favor of Palestine, but how many people would come? You could basically block one street and that was it. It was really not the case. Now, long story cut short, I would, 2.5 years ago, when Israel attacked Gaza, I think it's exactly 2.5 years ago in February of 2021. There was a big debate going on in Germany, and in Austria for that matter, is criticizing Israel anti-Semitism. And I wholeheartedly disagree. Any state, any modern state today must live with criticism. And Germany, having lived with a lot of criticism, should know it better. A fair criticism towards Israel should be allowed. A fair criticism towards another country is not anti-Americanism, anti-Frenchness, and it shouldn't be constructed or construed as being anti-Israel. But this discourse, unfortunately, has been completely shelved. Once again, it had been shelved 2.5 years ago. After early October, it has been shelved one more time. Which brings me to my final point in the first round. I am criticizing the German government. This is democracy. But there is this 1% asking for understanding why the Germans react today the way they do. And you have to understand the Schuld complex, the guilt complex, including Olaf Scholz, the chancellor. His generation grew up in the belief, no more fascism. Never, ever again Hitler again. No more Nazis. No far right wing. Even the AfD is, for most people, far too much on the right side, far right populism. Stop it before, we've seen it before. In order to convince the Germans that criticizing Israel is on the agenda by now, and it should be on the agenda, you have to give them leeway to go back to their Schuld complex, that it has to be overcome so many decades after the war, that living in a world which the Turkish president Recep Tayyip Erdogan so aptly called the world is bigger than five, Germany should have learned a lesson with its history now, and it should come up to a certain point even to the rescue of Israel and telling them, look, what you do is wrong. This is against what you built over decades. If you don't want to lose all of your reputation in the international arena eventually, stop it. Come to a peaceful solution. Allow humanitarian aid. Ultimately consider a two-state solution. And if there is one country which perhaps could discreetly or openly convey this, first of all, to Israel and to colleagues and friends in the European Union, I think it would be Berlin, because from the guilt complex, having become a modern, open to the world nation. Now, one of the countries you always defended, Israel, is engaging in grave humanitarian errors. The Germans can write books about it. I think this would be my biggest wish, building bridges, but someone must tell Israel, you have to stop the atrocities. That is, I think, for the first round. I hope I was not too long. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Klaus. You stopped in a very provocative sentences, especially the autocracies and atrocities point. I would like to go into the second round to use the time wisely. Actually, in the first round, I saw what you say in general, directly focusing on the role of media, the public opinion, even sometimes because I noticed that in the first week of after the 7th of October, the media of mostly the Western media and time to time the Western leaders' rhetoric has been also started to change. They started to also mention about the rights of Palestine and the human rights as well. So in the second round, I will start with the Tarek again. Tarek, I know that you authored very interesting books on the news media at the war, the clash of the Western and the Arab networks. I found your works very interestingly when we discussing the role of media and sometimes even the changing role between the public and the media as well. How do you see the differences between the Western media? And I know that you already know the TRT world and the other Turkish media, Al Jazeera, and even just only very few other countries' media try to be voice of the Palestinians when it comes to the human rights issue. How do you see the differences of the media outlets in the world and how they reflect the situation in Palestine to their audience and to the world?
Well, thank you very much for this question. I think we're seeing yet again a big divide between the way how media are portraying the situation. I think we have, as you rightly said, we have like at least two camps. One, most of the Western mainstream media, they follow the Israeli narrative. Actually, they adopted even some of the pointers and some of the frames that the Israeli leadership has been pursuing. They have time and again tried to put the representatives of the Palestinian into a bad light. They are trying in some of the debates, in some of the talk shows, they are trying to make them look bad in front of the audiences, even though I think that a lot of the Palestinian representatives did well. Because they now understand how to deal with certain questions, how to deal with certain frames. But I think overall we have two camps. We have the kind of counterflow, we can call it counterflow media outlets like Al Jazeera, and we have seen how the Israeli government is trying to actually expel them and prevent them from operating in Israel, even though the reporters from Al Jazeera and from TRT World and from Anadolu Agency and from other outlets, they're trying their best to have a balance, have a report also what the Israeli side is saying. But still, I think we are moving to a position where the Israeli leadership doesn't want anymore any kind of reporting both sides. They want just one side to be reported. They want exactly certain frames, like Valeria noted. They want the frame, this frame that is the clash of civilization frame. This frame, unfortunately, when you study it in terms of academy, when you go and dig deep, this is actually not a real. It doesn't have any value in terms of academic work, because some people, they try to study conflicts from since 1948 until 2010, and they don't find any elements for this the clash of civilization, because in any clash that happened in the region, like for example, let's say the Azerbaijan Armenia, we find that Iran, which is supposedly a champion of Islam, has sided with Armenia against Azerbaijan, even though they are the same. They are the same religion, and not only that, they are the same also Shiite determination. So what I'm saying is there have been a lot of discrepancies between the media. The Western, I think what's happening, the point that is very important and what's happening is that the Western media, the mainstream, has been adopting the Israeli points, but there is a counter movement. There is a counter movement both outside, which is Al Jazeera and TRT World and others, but also inside. And this is represented by the Generation Z. We are seeing a lot of pushback in terms of digital media. We are seeing a lot of, Israel actually is losing the battle on those platforms. And this is why we are seeing a lot of censorship. We are seeing how, we are witnessing how Meta and Facebook and Instagram are trying to censor and cut a lot of pro-Palestinian content. Same happening for other platforms. We have seen also how the Israelis are paying ads for the first time. They're trying to pay ads in order to justify their conduct and justify some of it, especially after the bombing of the hospital. I think the bombing of the hospital has been a turning point, because for 10 days, people were still waiting for, like I said, an adult in the room to step in and say, okay, guys, this is the round of clash. So let's go back to the table. Let's have some talk. I think the government of Turkey tried that. I think the Qataris, they tried that. I think other players tried that. But I think that the point that I mentioned in the first round, which is the myth of invincibility, as it has been shattered, now we have somebody like Netanyahu trying to use it, actually, this threat as an opportunity. You flip the coin. They're trying to flip this negative that happened to them into a positive, in the sense that now they're gonna go into more genocide making plans and try to finish once and for all with Gaza and push all these people outside of Gaza and do another transfer of the population. And for this, he needs the buy-in of the Western elites. He needs the media to be on his side. He needs a lot of blacking out of the real facts on the ground. And he needs one narrative. And this is why we have seen also to this point how a lot of the leaders, like for example, Macron, Darmanin in France, the interim minister, we have seen how UK Home Minister Suay, Braverman, criminalizing those who carry Palestinian. Yet, even though with all this criminalization, all this muzzling the public opinion, which is a phenomenon when you think about Europe as a champion of human rights, as they're trying to push Turkey and the Middle East to adopt like more behavior that is conducive to human rights. But then when we see something like that happen, there is no human rights, there is no freedom of speech. It's just one line that need to be adopted. It's the line of the elites. It's the line that's coming from the leadership, from the Israeli leadership. But here it is. They are losing the battle for the public opinion, especially the younger generations. And we are seeing, like I said, paid ads. We have seen deep fakes and Photoshop, a lot of Photoshop to show that the streets are carrying the flags of Israel, which is not. These are blatant lies circulated in social media. But also we are seeing demonstrations. I don't know if you are aware, but one demonstration happened a couple of days ago in London. Was one of the largest demonstrations in the history of the UK. And this is very important because UK has been the source, if we can say so, of the problem. The UK was, the Great Britain was the colonizing power. It is the one that has given the keys of the country to the Israelis. We've seen also how, for example, even young Jewish constituencies also protesting. I don't know if my colleagues have seen, but Harvard students, most of them are also Jewish. They have been protesting, a lot of times against, what's happening in Israel. They wrote even an anti-Israel letter, but then we see how they have been also subject to pressure. There was like a truck with a billboard displaying their names and photos so that like future employers don't employ them. This kind of aggressive tactics of trying to push the narrative in this way, I think, it might have been, productive for the Israelis in terms of the older generations. But I think there is a greater pushback from the younger generations. And I think this is where the next battle is. And in my assessment, my humble assessment, I think right now, the Israelis are not doing great as they used to be. I completely take on board the comments done by Klaus. You know, in the past, especially the 60s, the 70s, the Israeli propaganda was very, very well crafted. It was also, they managed this human dimension. They invited people. There was the kibbutz, the peace lovers. But the reality now, they are all colonial settlers. They are very religious, extremist religious settlers. They don't care about the world. They have this very apocalyptic view. I don't know if you have seen, but yesterday, Netanyahu brought some justification, which is completely a religious justification to the war. If any leader anywhere in the Middle East or North Africa put this kind of justification, he would have been crucified in the media. He would have been completely targeted by all quarters. But here you go, nobody is doing anything. So I will stop here, and happy to take the next question.
Thank you, Tarek. Actually, yesterday, the Netanyahu's note on the some points regarding the Judaism makes everyone a little bit afraid that where it will be going. But I think especially after the Russian-Ukrainian war, because we marked the Russian-Ukrainian war as a kind of milestone. We saw the hybrid war in the 21st century, but the last events in the Palestine also marked in a different way how the social media and the communication channels was challenged, but at the same time, unfortunately, demonizedly used by the Israeli government to make manipulation, to looking for justification for their genocidal attempts in Palestine. So I think it will be the case for many years for the upcoming academics works, but it will be always interesting to see how that the media domination and the social media manipulation with the fake news, the bubbling news, that kind of stuff started to be mostly, at least, the falling down thanks to the efforts of the TRT World, Anadolu Agency, the other Turkish channels, and as well as the Al Jazeera and some other channels. I would like to ask another question to Valeria. She mentioned about the clash of civilization. Valeria, in last few days, there was a interesting discussion in the public regarding this Palestinian issue will be a kind of a new trigger in the European societies, because the European itself and most of if you ask me, the citizen in the different parts of the world started to feel insecure, where the international organization and most of the developed countries failed to react how any countries like Israel make that kind of genocidal attempts in Palestine, but there is no international norms and standards works anymore. Do you think that will there be a middle term and the long term effect of this? Right now, the clash between the Israelis and Hamas on the European societies, especially the feeling of insecure regarding the failing of the European values. And also, there's another discussion related with how the Muslim minorities in European societies later see their governments react, and will it be a later, more longer-term effect on their attachment to their government, like in France and all other countries?
Thank you, Suay. I think anything you mention is mainly related as well to what Tarek mentioned, and it's valid in Europe, because what we have seen that as soon as the conflict has started, many media, they spread the danger that Europe can be again a target for terroristic attack. As I said, there are some countries such as France that they banned any sort of protest and rallies, and there is high alert. And also in Italy, we have been warned many times of some suspicious pack that they were aiming at being a bomb against some sensitive places and locations. So there is this increasing fear that we are living in unsecure environment, but basically there is this fear that we are again, as it was during along the terrorist attack back in 2015 and 16 by Daesh, that we are again a target of a sort of terrorist which is pivoting on the Muslim countries. So, and moreover, this narrative and this rhetoric related to the clash of the civilization is just feeding this behavior and this fear. Definitely, there is a dividing line. Definitely, there is awareness that we are living in a world that is managed by a sort of disorder. I mean, the disorder is the new rule of the world. Anything is unpredictable. We don't know really where the threats are coming from, but as well, there is a sort of weakness by the institution of protecting us. But again, the general feeling, and there is this fear and this suspicion about something which is related to the rest, comparing to the West, right? And this is not going to be a positive development. Moreover, because we have many diasporas in Europe, that they are pretty much integrated, but as well they feel as they are underrepresented. I spoke with a Palestinian guy very recently who is living in Italy, and he feels in despair in a way that his family is in Palestine, and is very angry and afraid of the escalation of the situation, and as well it does not feel safe in Italy too, because many prejudice and many bias and also double standard. And I think the policymakers need to understand this, that we live in a society that is multi-ethnic society nowadays. And this narrative, polarizing the perception and framing the reality, is not really working, and it has a reverse effect as well. Then when it comes to the West and the international institutions, once again, yes, I mean, it comes the motto of the world is bigger than five, as Klaus has mentioned, as the President Erdogan is continuously reiterating. I mean, this international architecture is not working, either in preventing conflict and either in finding a solution for the conflict and in maintaining the peace. So I think we need all to act with a longer common sense. The states, the main stakeholders of the conflict, they need to refrain from violence, and they have to calm down, basically, and also this dominant position by Israel and the US backing Israel is not going to give any positive outcome out of there. I mean, already the Middle East is pretty much fragmented, polarized, and there is a further polarization once again between the West and the rest of the world. And there is again a lack of understanding, honestly. I mean, for me, it's very frustrating to watch the news and to see many people that they are speaking about Middle East, they are talking about Israel, Palestine, also Turkey, and they never stepped in the Middle East. They do not speak the language, but they are telling a sort of truth that is framing the reality and the perception of the people. So I think we all of us, we need to reconsider our behavior, and overall the main stakeholder of the conflict, they need to act responsibly, more or less, and trying to open margin for a constructive negotiation and a constructive ceasefire, and lasting ceasefire at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. It's important to emphasize that people are talking in West, talking about the Middle East issues and its geopolitical implication, but they even doesn't know they never visited those countries or never been there, or at least doesn't have any broad background for the region, and especially in this conflict. My last question to Klaus. Klaus, actually, as I told you, your last sentence is really how can I say, influence me in somehow. It's a very provocative way, but also I would like to ask that you said that someone need to say this, right, to stop these atrocities and that kind of collective punishment that we saw in the Palestine. How you will see the because the last 1 week also Tarek, Valeria also mentioned that we saw some movements in both in Germany and also in different parts of the West. The new generation started to talk about some concepts regarding the Israel, because as you said, when it comes to the Israel in Germany and some countries, it is untouchable. I mean, it is basically protected in the in psychological and the political way. But in last 1 week, especially after the hospital bombing attack, the new generation started to discuss the anti-Semitism, Zionism, and how it's related with the Israelis' motives since the 1967 and those kind of things. Do you think that there will be the new generation of the Western countries that see at least, as you said, the criticizing of Israel is not equal to anti-Semitism? Do you believe that this very unfortunate photos and the events happened in the bombing happened in the Palestine will let that kind of mindset changing in the West?
Well, that would be the crystal ball question, dear Suay. But no, I do have, you know me a bit, usually 1 or 2% optimism somewhere stacked, rolled up my sleeves, even in times of crisis, war, catastrophe. Because if not, what's the point? Tarek Bey mentioned the United Kingdom. Now, you may know that this is probably the second country besides Turkey and Germany, the third. I happen to know reasonably to extremely well for many reasons. Now, as it so happened, life's coincidence, 1 or 2 days, it was before October the 7th, I was in London at an event of the British Conservative Party, currently in government. Probably not for much longer, if I believe the opposition. That's life. Now, as it so happened, I sat at the table with one representative from Armenia and one representative from Israel. And the first point, of course, they had found out, Tarek, I remember, had been to Azerbaijan a few months ago, and which made some rounds in the United Kingdom. And of course, the first question was, do you support a dictator? And I did not venture further into that. But then, of course, just across the table, the gentleman from Israel, a representative from a friendly party, don't get me wrong, but sister party, as we call it, said what is Erdogan's position towards the state of Israel, and he could not know what is going to happen a few hours later. But again, it is a highly charged debate in Germany, in the governing coalition, which is dominated for the time being by socialists or social democrats. In the United Kingdom, for the time being dominated by conservative thinkers. And even if you try to mention that fair critique towards Israel should finally become the order of the day in a frank, fair, honest way, even in a country which was not responsible for fascism and the horrors of the Nazi regime, even over there, it has become, in a number of circles, literally a no-go area, a taboo. Don't even mention this. How dare you? Now, where is my 1 or 2 point optimism, Suay? I'm not normally quoting her, but she's a fine young lady, and all admiration to her greater. Okay, and as you know, I've spent some more time in Sweden, so maybe I should come to her defense. Now, she actually, this time not Fridays for Future, but she basically put a poster up with her name under it and say, "Free Palestine is now what we need." She is, like it, love it, extremely influential, normally considered being someone supported by the World Economic Forum without having her own standing. I never said this. I just repeat what other people say. She is someone in the spotlight. Again, love it, hate it. She has her viewpoint. She is young and she says what she thinks. Fair enough. Heads up. Compliments. Now, we can challenge her. Is it right or is it wrong? But this is life. This is democracy. Now, the fact that an influencer, as she would probably call herself, speaks up in favor of Palestine, this might lead to see or detect a little bit of light at the end of only pro-Israeli sentiments. Then we have this huge demonstration. I saw this can't be fake news, it was real, the London demonstration pro-Palestine. I would perhaps even say it was not pro-Palestine, it was not anti-Israel, but it was pro-humanitarian aid. It was stop the killing of innocent children and women and old people. There are rules even in a war. This is, I think, the key what I took from watching these demonstrations. Now, last point, if I still have a minute or two. Now, we must be careful not to allow this conflict to dominate internal party machinery. In Germany and in the United Kingdom, if I may swap heads for 1 minute, Sir Keir Starmer, the opposition candidate from the British Labour Party, he is not as outspoken anti-Israel as Jeremy Corbyn would be. Jeremy Corbyn, the former Labour Party leader, openly accused of being anti-Semitic, which in some of his comments, we must be honest, he overshot the runway by challenging the existence of the state of Israel. What we should focus on is a two-state solution. So should Labour come to power, we should hope that the moderates come to power, criticizing Israel, but not negating the right of having its own existence. Then we are back to square one, or even worse. Tarek Bey mentioned the ball is in the British courts. Of course, they basically started the whole quagmire and catastrophic situation, as we mentioned back in 1947-48, the old British mandate. They should have their own guilt complex. They should come to terms with the realization that there was something wrong in our history. How can we make it right? Finally help to create peace, a Palestine state, an Israel state. No one is attacking each other, and somehow a capital, most likely East Jerusalem, under a kind of United Nations mandate, if the United Nations finally is reformed and has something to say in world politics again. So it is, yes, the London demonstration. Could it have happened anywhere else? No. It is a sign of the times that Britain, post or pre-Brexit, I don't care about that in this context, it has continued and it will continue to allow freedom of expression, which is good to see. Then we watched similar, much smaller demonstrations. They couldn't even take off in Germany, with anti-riot police basically beating up what I would, hindsight of the doubt, I don't know who was involved, but assuming harmless protesters, not intent on harming a policeman or throwing stones into windows or what have you, just protesting. I would hope that this becomes a kind of spiraling effect going into other countries as well, in particular with the younger generation, students, young workers, young academics, what have you. It doesn't matter from which background you come, but that you simply say, look, we just overcame a pandemic. We never expected it to happen. So many people lost their lives. Now we have the Ukraine situation. So many people lost their lives. Now we have Palestine, Israel. When will it finally be enough? We want to have a peaceful coexistence in Europe, and Israel and Palestine must have a peaceful coexistence too. Will this work? Here ends my optimism. You know it. I mean, compliments always. It is extremely difficult for young people in Europe to enter politics. You need to be 60 or 70, I'm overdoing it now, ever to be elected to run your local neighborhood party political club. So will they be heard? Good question. I think mainstream parties in Europe will shy away to take sides in the immediate future. There will be elections in Germany, national elections, and there will be national elections in the United Kingdom. And no party, unfortunately, wants to be seen as the loser because they drop Israel as a support topic. But this is life. We must live with it. We must start to lobby. We must lobby our media colleagues. We must lobby civil society. We must lobby our politicians in Europe. We should not give up. When I see the pictures of children being bombed and losing their lives, and I always ask myself, how can I explain this to my own children? You know, what kind of world do we live in, Daddy? And I think this is something where we can get the younger generation on our board, and ultimately, hopefully, people who have a bit more reasoning in the established older generation. Last point, promised you, just the last quote I made only a few hours ago. The Munich Security Conference was debating the two-state solution, and one of the key organizers, one of the hosts, a leading German politician, actually said this is the only way forward. Unfortunately, a vast majority of the attendees did not seem to agree. Munich Security Conference live as we speak. But this is the adult, established political view. Now, even this is basically unheard of even days ago. Now, could there be a change of mind and attitude? I honestly hope so. I honestly hope so. The bloodshed must end.
Thank you, Klaus. Thank you very much for all of the three distinctive speakers today. I would like to say just a few sentences as a conclusion remarks, if you allow me. It's a very timing webinar we organize, and also it is the first, once more I emphasize that it's the first English webinar organized by the Turkish NGO, but also we need to be together, at least what the Klaus, Valeria, Tarek, and me said, that we need to focus on the humanitarian side and the reality of this, the human issues over there. And it's always that it doesn't matter, it's Ukraine, it's Palestine, and we should be against at least the double standards that given by the other parts of the world. But as Klaus said, since the 7th of October, I have been on the many TV programs, and it turns to a very heavy psychology. We saw many babies died over there. But there are some photos that released today. Many small children smiled to the cameras in the backbone of the abolished buildings over there, and it gives the hope to our hearts that they believe that the human beings and the humanity will coexist together in everywhere. Hope so, and we should work on this more. And of course, our country, to Turkey, try to make some concrete steps to have the ceasefire first, and later the peace process around the idea of the two-state solution. But we will see how it will be evolved and how it will going on. Once more, thank you to Director of the Diplomacy Foundation, Associate Professor Oğuzhan Bilgin. And once more, thank you to Tarek, Valeria, and Klaus. Hope we will be together face to face in soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.